Hello everybody out there in internet land. I just wanted to make a little quick video in the lead up to the release of my next book. So next week I'm releasing Bleeding Edge, which is the first in the Edge Force series. Brand new LitRPG universe from yours truly. And I wanted to do something a little bit special this time. So a lot of people have asked about audiobooks and whatnot from some of my previous releases, and while I haven't been able to make that a reality, it is my intention to make Edge Force, the series, myself. So I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of an unedited, quick preview of the first chapter of the book. So feel free to drop a comment and say, maybe you should pay a professional to do your audiobooks. Or if you are of the opposite opinion, you can say, yeah, sweet, go ahead and do it. Whatever you want. Anyway, without further ado, here is the first chapter of Bleeding Edge, Edge Force 1. My eyes snapped open at the sound of gnashing teeth. I blinked a couple of times just to make sure my eyes were open, because all I saw was black. A creature near me was trying to take a bite out of something, but I couldn't see shit. A single light bloomed in the floor in front of me, which illuminated someone walking on the ceiling. Steel bars separated us. My mind raced, trying to figure out how they were ignoring the laws of gravity. I looked down to see a chain affixed to some shackles around my legs, which were floating upwards. A sudden shift in my perspective made my head spin. The shambling gnasher on the other side of the bars wasn't walking on the ceiling. I was upside down, hanging by my feet. This was far less than ideal. I saw the thing beyond the cell door in a new light. While it looked human at first glance, wearing a tattered plaid shirt and torn, dirt-stained jeans, it chattered away to itself as it searched for prey. It had been human once, but definitely wasn't any longer. The sockets of the eyes were empty, full of putrescent sludge which dripped over its pallid cheeks as it wandered around the room beyond the cell. Something that looked like osteoderms, the thick, scaly armour that covered the backs of crocodiles, had started to grow over the exposed skin of the thing's head. I frantically looked around the cell to find some way I could get myself loose. My heart sank when I saw the door standing ajar. It wasn't all the way open, but nothing would stop that thing from getting in here with me if it stumbled in the right direction. Above me, there was a lock on the shackles, which meant that there had to be a key around here somewhere. I just needed to find it. I swung my head in either direction, desperately looking for the key. How long did I have before that thing discovered the open cell door? My arms were tied in front of me with a loose coil of fraying rope. I grinned as I brought the rope to my lips and started tearing at it with my teeth. Sometimes a small victory is enough to stoke the fires of motivation. A jolt of pain in my left arm made me pause. I recoiled for a second and stared dumbfounded at the unmistakable outline of a key sitting just under my skin. "Oh, this is some jigsaw bullshit," I said, and immediately regretted opening my mouth. The eyeless thing rushed towards me with its mouth open and its arms outstretched. It slammed into the cell wall and bounced off. Even though its eyes had turned into lumpy strawberry jam, it could still hear me. With a long and storied history of watching horror movies and writing my own horror novels and screenplays, I knew I couldn't waste any time. I worked the rope with my mouth until I could slip my hands free, then lifted my forearm to my lips. No time to think. No time to second guess myself. No time to dwell on how much this was going to hurt. If I didn't do this, then this motherfucker would tear my face off as soon as it came into the cell, and that would hurt a hell of a lot more. I bit down. The key felt huge in my mouth as my skin bulged around it, a hard core inside the soft flesh of my forearm. Skin tore, blood flowed, filling my mouth with a warm, coppery tang. I pulled away and jammed my fingers into the jagged wound, fishing around inside for the key. I found the jagged teeth of the key, then tore it free, ripping out some fatty tissue and part of my skin with it. I tested the fingers of my left hand quickly and was happy to see that I still had full range of movement. I hadn't damaged any ligaments. I tossed the gore away from the key and prepared my abs to do some real work for a change. I lifted myself up towards the shackles, holding my feet in place, and felt the pressure rising in my head. The chain was locked with a massive padlock, which I might be able to use to my advantage if I managed to get it free. I slipped the key into the bottom of the lock, and at the same time, the cell door started to creak open. The next thing I knew, the damn thing was in the cell with me, as I battled with the padlock. I went very quiet and very still. The chain that held me to the ceiling was taut and didn't make a noise, but if I fell out of those shackles and onto the ground, I'd make a hell of a racket. I'd probably end up knocking the wind out of myself too, leaving me open to attack. This next bit was going to be hard. The padlock slipped open as I turned the key. I held onto the chain with one hand and worked each of my feet out of the shackles as slowly and carefully as possible. The eyeless thing moved around the perimeter of the room, using its hands to feel along the walls. My abdominal muscles screamed at me, but there was nothing I could do until my second leg was freed. And after a few terrifying but careful moments, it was. For the first time since my rude awakening, I was right side up, and my head swam as the blood rushed back down where it belonged. I held the chain with one hand, the padlock held claw-like by my pinky finger, with the shackles clutched in my other hand. Before I let myself drop to the floor, I threw the shackles into the far corner of the room. They landed with a metal clang that drew the attention of the eyeless thing. It screamed in fury at the noisy metal, and I used this distraction to get the hell out of there. I used the padlock to lock the cell behind me, trapping the monster on the other side of the bars. That didn't stop the eyeless thing from launching itself at the creaky cell door again, but this time it was resolutely locked shut. I stepped back as the monster flailed uselessly through the bars at me. Another door stood ajar towards the back of the room. It was the only way that I was getting out of here, but there was something fishy going on. The eyeless thing was one part of the clusterfuck, but not the only one worth considering. I had no idea how I'd gotten here, had no idea where here was, and it was getting exceedingly evident that someone else was pulling the strings. Rusty doors in desperate need of some WD-40 didn't just open by themselves. Plus, they'd implanted a key under my skin. But the strangest thing was that there was no surgical scar from the insertion. It was almost like the key had been manifested inside my body, which was utterly impossible. Before leaving the room, I scoured every inch of it for something that I might be able to use in case I encountered any more of those eyeless things. The dilapidated cabinets around the edge of the room were falling apart, but the packaging of the long-expired food was thankfully all written in English. There were some packages that I recognised. An old wrapper from a packet of Tim Tams, clearly purchased by some cheap bastard who didn't want to spring for the much superior double coat variety. I knew you could buy those biscuits overseas. I'd done so many times doing book signing tours for a little slice of home. But I had a feeling that I was still in Australia. I had to question that when I found a box of 9mm ammunition hidden in the drawers of a desk. You didn't just find boxes of ammos lying about in Australia. Despite not having a gun, I picked up the ammo. And just as I was about to slip them into my pocket, a weird translucent window appeared in front of me. 5 9mm rounds received, compatible with any compatible with any weapon that can fire 9mm rounds. It looked like something you'd see in a video game. Okay, I think I know what's going on here, I said, finally understanding what was happening. I'm dreaming! This is a nightmare, right? Come on, Johnny boy, time to wake up. I slapped myself across the face, and the pain was most certainly real. It didn't snap me out of this nightmare, which meant that there was every likelihood that this was either terrifyingly real or I was having a complete psychotic break. Maybe my ex-wife was right when she gave me shit for playing so many video games. The sound of the slap caught the attention of the eyeless thing locked in the cell. I couldn't just leave it here. One way or the other, I needed to put it down. This thing wasn't human anymore. The rest of the cupboards didn't yield much, but I did find one more thing that stopped me in my tracks. A small pill container with 3 red capsules inside. 3 minor healing pills received. Can be used to heal minor injuries over time. The jagged cut in my arm, where I'd torn open the skin with my teeth, pulsed, but the adrenaline surge had dulled that pain to a point where I couldn't even feel it. I unscrewed the cap from the pill canister and swallowed one dry. The effect took a few seconds to notice, and I really wanted to know whether this nightmare I was in followed video game logic, like it seemed to. A small icon appeared in the upper periphery of my vision, and when I focused on it, a small window appeared. Minor health regeneration. Healing minor injuries. The window showed a number counting down from 60. I watched the jagged cut in my arm with morbid curiosity as the seconds ticked away. By the time it hit 45, the wound had scabbed over. By 30, the redness and swelling started to disappear. The scab began to flake off around the edges. By the time it hit 0, the scab was barely hanging onto my skin, and when I wiped it away, there was no sign that I'd even been injured at all. What I noticed was that there was no mention of health, or HP, or vitality, or any kind of measurement of a player's health that you'd typically see in a video game. The injury was the injury, and the pills focused on healing that. Okay, that's pretty wild, I said, which sent the monster into another gnashing fury at the sound of my voice. Ah, shut the fuck up, you crusty dickhead, I called out to it as I headed toward the door, and my only means of escape. End of chapter 1. So, one thing I'm a little bit nervous of is when I speak, I generally tend to, like, my brain gets a couple of steps ahead of where the text is, and that's where you see a quote that comes out that says, like, not 5 9mm rounds received, compatible with any women that can fire 9mm rounds. So that was very, very not intentional. And that's why I'm very thankful that when I actually do make the audiobooks, I'm going to have a way to edit it instead of just doing it all in one take like this. So anyway, that's the first chapter of Bleeding Edge, Edge Force 1. It is open for pre-order on Amazon right now. It's going to be going live on the 21st of October, 2021, which is next Thursday, which is simultaneously very exciting and also very terrifying. If you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you're going to be able to get this for free as part of your membership, which is super cool. The paperbacks and the hardcovers are not yet set up, but they will be very, very soon. My intention is that they're going to be live either when the ebook itself goes live or shortly after. Huge thanks to everyone who's already pre-ordered it, considering the pre-order went live yesterday. And for everyone who's, shared links and all of that kind of stuff. It's very, 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 very appreciated on this side of the fence. So I guess that's all for me. The other, well, it's not actually all for me. One other thing is that Edge Force 2 is currently being written over on both my Patreon, which get any of my patrons, they always get my content first. And then the Royal guys over at Royal Road will get it second, and that's accessible for free. You'll get it in alpha version, which means that it is absolutely going to change between when you read it on Patreon and Royal Road and versus when it's published on Amazon. For example, the version that everyone was able to read of this story of Bleeding Edge on Patreon and Royal Road, it's probably about 2,500 to 3,000 words shorter than the actual final version. So I think when I first finished it, it was about 92,000 words, which is about 350 pages, but as it came out. At the end, it was about 96,000, which is about 375 pages. So hopefully it should entertain people for a little bit, which is good. And it's, yeah, my complete intention to turn it into an audiobook as soon as possible. I've just got to figure out the technology side of things, get my head around, all of the mastering and that. If the book does well enough, I'm going to be able to pay someone to do that for me, which means that I'll be able to get it even quicker, which is great. So if you feel like supporting the book when it launches, that's absolutely fantastic and very much appreciated. But until then, that is all from me this time. Let me know what you think. See you later.